Hello, welcome to another episode of Gameworms. My name is Reil. I'm going to be your guide today through the excitement that is Twilight Imperium 4. And this is another faction summary. And the faction we'll be discussing is the Emirates of Hacan. And who are the Hacan? The Hacan are one of the more well-known, maybe iconic, great races in Twilight Imperium. They usually feature very prominently on the box. Let me hold that up for you. The big lion guy there. So they're big cat people that live on desert planets. They're all about money and trade. They're basically what you get if you have the Thundercats and Dune had a baby in Vegas and Scrooge McDuck adopted it. You basically got the Hacan there. So they're the rich fellas. They live on a series of desert planets around a big sun called Canara. The planets are Emirates, Camdorn, and Hacan. And even though there are people on these planets, the bulk, the hub of activity is actually in space stations surrounding these planets. So there's lots and lots and lots of traffic. So one time, many years ago, I remember driving on, if you guys happen to be familiar with I'm not American, but this is when I was in the US, we were driving down the I-15 through Nevada, and all of a sudden, we hit heavy traffic in the middle of the desert, just cars lined up, middle of nowhere, and this was as we were approaching Las Vegas. And it just felt very strange to be in a traffic jam, and all I could see around me was desert. I think it might have been like American Thanksgiving long weekend or something, so it was more than normal, but kind of how I imagine the Emirates of Hacan. You have these guys that live on these desert planets, very, kind of desolate, but then just tons and tons and tons of traffic in the space surrounding them, in the orbits around these planets. And so they've got like casinos and clubs and hotels and warehouses and all sorts of things going on. And when you get down on the planet, you have the desert planet, of course, and you've got farmers. You still have merchants and things like that going on down there. And so on these planets, it's a very hot, arid sort of environment. There's only one stationary city, and I think it was called Hacan. Let me double check my notes here. Yeah, Hacan, which is on Emirates, the planet of Emirates. Kind of a big, massive city, and it's kind of like, as far as, it kind of matches the busyness of the space stations. But other than that, it's kind of more a relaxed, chilled planet. And the other cities are not stationary like Hacan. They move around. They're kind of on these dust sleds they call them, and they're pulled around by these great herds of beasts. And so what I gather is that I guess as the beasts migrate probably to cooler climates, they pull these cities along with them. And so the Hacan used to be really poor. But they figured out how to kind of mine these like rare herbs and roots and things like that, and they turned them into things like, medicines, drugs, cloths, luxury clothing, stuff like that. And because of all these discoveries that they've made, they've become quite wealthy and quite the trade masters of the galaxy. So if you love money, you want to be rich, and you want everyone to love you because of your money, then Hacan is for you. So let's take a look at their starting system. So they're with the original Twilight Imperium 4, this was the only system that actually had 3 planets on it. Now the Argent Flight also has 3 planets. As you notice, the 3 planets aren't as good as a lot of the other planets. So you have like Emirates that has 2 resource, Hacan has 1 resource, 1 influence, and Camdorn just has 1. So you have a total of 3 and 3. So overall, it's actually a weaker system. But they're going to have more than enough abilities to make up for that weak start there. So their starting technology, they get anti-mass deflectors and Sarween tools. So Sarween tools basically gives you a discount on purchases, so they're already saving money. For their starting units, they have 2 carriers, a cruiser, 2 fighters, 4 infantry, and a space dock. So they have the envied 2 carrier, 4 infantry, that you typically want to have. They have, and I know on a lot of these videos I haven't really talked about commodity capacities, but it's worth pointing out with the Emirates of Hacan, they have a maximum commodity of 6, which is more than anybody else. I think the next highest is 4. So they can trade like nobody's business. And a lot of their abilities just have to do with trading and making money. The cool thing about that is that people don't want to fight you a lot, because not only can you afford big fleets, but they want you to trade with them. Until people start gunning for the finish line, and then all bets are off. Let's take a look at their faction abilities. So they are the Masters of Trade. You do not have to spend a command token to resolve the secondary ability of the Trade Strategy card. So that means you're always going to have full commodities whenever trade goes off. So even if the other person playing the trade card doesn't allow you to fill your commodities, you can just do it anyway. Guild ships. You can negotiate transactions with players who are not your neighbor. That's super valuable. So most factions, you need to be able to get adjacent to somebody. You have to have an adjacent system in order to deal with somebody, to do trades and things. But the Hacan doesn't matter. They have guild ships all over the galaxy, so they can just trade with whoever they want. Arbiters. When you negotiate a transaction, action cards can be exchanged as part of that transaction. So they're the only faction I can think of that can actually use action cards to trade. And now this means if they're part of the transaction, they can give and take action cards. So even more punch than just having a lot of money. So that's pretty cool. In terms of their fleet, they don't have any special units like some of the other factions do. But of course, their flagship and their mech are going to be unique to them. So let's take a look at their flagship, the Wrath of Kanara. After you roll a die during a space combat in this system, you may spend 1 trade good to apply +1 to the result. So, I mean, that's okay. I just think about how, and I don't think that's the most valuable ability, I would say overall the flagship is not super notable. It's like it gets 2 dice to attack, but they only hit on 7 or higher. Its cost, move, and capacity are pretty standard. So it's not that it's not worth getting. I mean, they're going to have the money where, potentially they'll have the money where buying it's not a big deal, but it's not, I wouldn't say this is near top tier or even mid-tier flagship. Well, let's take a look at their mech. This is called the Pride of Kanara. This planet's planet card may be traded as part of a transaction. If you do, move all of your units from the planet to another planet you control. If you have your mech on a planet, you can exchange that planet and move all your guys off of it. So you might be wondering why you would ever want to give up a planet. So there's a lot of situations where this might be handy. So let's say somebody wants your planet for an objective and you just don't want to commit the resources to defending it, or you're going to lose and you'd rather save those resources for later. So you're like, okay, fine, just have it, get all my guys out of there. Or let's say somebody has gone to war with you and you can pull a Charles the Simple, So this, if I'm remembering this right, I didn't look it up before I made this video, but there was a king in France, like hundreds of years ago, and I think it was Charles the Simple, and Vikings used to attack the coast, and he got frustrated with it. So the kings before him, what they used to do is they would just pay the Vikings off for them to leave, but he didn't want to do that, so he told them, tell you what, I'm going to give you guys the coastal region. We'll just let you have that land. And so what happened is they settled that land. It's now Normandy, and they settled it and kind of just married in with the French women and stuff like that. Who apparently the French women really liked them because they had better hygiene. And so because they now owned the coastline, they would help protect it from other Vikings. But anyway, so let's say somebody has declared war on you, and you're like, well, I don't want to deal with this planet, but maybe my neighbor could use it, and if I give it to him, he'll help defend my border, there's lots of little situations could come up where you need to get where it's better for you to get rid of that planet and save your people you have on it. All right, so that's their units. Let's take a look at their technologies, their faction technologies. So production biomes. Now this has an action keyword, which means that when you do this, this is your turn. You're not doing other stuff, except trading. Obviously, you can do whenever on your turn. So action, exhaust this card and spend 1 token from your strategy pool to gain 4 trade goods and choose one other player. That player gains 2 trade goods. So this just is a way for you to get quick buck if you need it. And unless you're scrambling for cash, it requires 2 green text to get, I don't know if that's the one I'd head for. The next one's way better. It's even more expensive though. The Quantum Data Hub node. At the end of the strategy phase, you may spend 1 token from your strategy pool and give another player 3 of your trade goods. If you do, give 1 of your strategy cards to that player and take 1 of his strategy cards. So this is after all the strategy cards have been selected. You can basically force someone to take some money and then take his strategy card. Or her strategy card. And that's just amazing, especially when you're going to make enemies. Like, people are going to hate you for this. But it's a good end game. Like, if you're fighting to get the Imperial strategy card because you want those extra points to pull off the victory, I mean, that's a big problem a lot of times in the end game, is you're really close to victory, so nobody's letting you get that Imperial card. In this way, you can just force it, So, yeah, money talks there. So I like that one. That's the one I would go for before production biomes. Well, let's take a look at their leaders. So first, as the agent, we have Karth of Golden Sands. So during the action phase, you may exhaust this card to gain 2 commodities or replenish another player's commodity. So let's say you've traded off all your commodities already, or it's the very beginning of the game and it hasn't gone off yet. You still get a couple of commodities you could trade with somebody. You just trade all over the place. Okay, the Hacan commander is Gila, the Silver Tongue. I don't know if it's supposed to be Gila or Gila, like Gila Monster. To unlock, the commanders always have a custom unlock. So to unlock this one, you need 10 trade goods, which shouldn't be a huge problem. The ability is when you cast votes, you may spend any number of trade goods. Cast 2 additional votes for each trade good spent. Pretty pricey, so I don't think you'd pull this out very often unless it's a huge vote and you know it's going to be very close. Almost to the point where I don't even know if I would use this unless I was the speaker, like the last voter, and I knew I could pull it off. Because that's pretty pricey. So, not my favorite of the commanders. Let's take a look at the hero. Herog Gefhara. Unlocked by having 3 scored objectives, just like every other hero. And this is the Galactic Securities Net. When 1 or more of your units use production, you may reduce the cost of each of your units to 0 during this use of production. If you do, purge this card. And that's amazing. So you're basically just getting, you still have to follow production limits. So you can only build X number of units per space dock, but it's free. So you get like a giant free build at some point in the game. And that's I would say this is a top tier. The only ones I can think of that I like more than this are the Ghosts of Creus and the Embers of Muat. And those ones aren't necessarily better. They're just more kind of amazingly fun. But the Galactic Securities Net, like just a giant fleet for free, and you're already got plenty of money, so that's pretty good. What I do really like with these guys, I think they have one of my favorite promissory notes, and this is trade convoys. So this is, you would give, again, you never use this. You give this to another player for them to use, but I think this is a good bargaining chip because it's pretty desirable. So action, place this card face up in your play area. While this card is in your play area, you may negotiate transactions with players who are not your neighbor. If you activate a system that contains 1 or more of the Hacan player's units, return this card to the Hacan player. So basically, if you can get this from the Hacan, you're getting their guild ship's ability. So you no longer are required to be adjacent to another player to make trades. That's pretty amazing. So that's one of my favorite of their things that they have. Hacan, very popular faction. Who doesn't love money? Now, in terms of the anthem, some of these get copyrights. Some of them let me post them in. Some give me copyright strikes. I'm going to try to upload it with the video, and if that doesn't work, what happens is it'll give me the option to just have it pulled out so it won't be there. But if the anthem does not show up, then either way, I'm going to put a link in the description anyway. So just please rise for the Hacan Anthem.
Cash, coal, that's what I need.
Full of love.